This is the Reading to Learn Math for section 5.6. Explain the difference between angle side angle and angle angle side. It's the same pairs of congruent parts. The only difference is the congruent sides here are included and the congruent sides here are non-included. Number 2, determine whether you can prove the triangle is congruent with the given information. If you can state which postulate, theorem, or definition you could use. If it's not possible to prove them congruent, write not possible. Okay, so part A says two sides of one triangle are congruent to two sides of another triangle. It's not possible to prove that those are congruent. There's no side-side postulate, but they definitely could be congruent if you had some more information. Part B, three sides of one triangle are congruent to three sides of another triangle. That's side, side, side. You got three pairs of congruent sides. They have to be the same size and shape. Part C, three angles of one triangle are congruent to three angles of another triangle. It's very possible that those are congruent. You just can't prove it. We don't have an angle, angle, angle postulate, so this is not possible. Part D, all six corresponding parts of two triangles are congruent. Well, if you got six pairs of congruent parts, the triangles are definitely congruent. You can use any one of the shortcuts that we have, or just the definition of congruent triangles. If every pair of corresponding parts are congruent, then the triangles are congruent. Part E, two angles in the included side of one triangle are congruent to two angles in the included side of another triangle. That's angle side angle. You got congruent sides in between congruent angles. Part F, two sides in the included angle of one triangle are congruent to two sides in the included angle of another triangle. That's side angle side. Congruent angles included between congruent sides. Number 3, you're given that two triangles are congruent since angle D is congruent to angle X, angle E is congruent to angle Y, and segment EF is congruent to segment YZ. What postulate or theorem was used to prove the triangle is congruent? Explain how you know. Well, I know just by looking here. I got two pairs of congruent angles and a pair of congruent sides. So that could be angle side angle, or it could be angle angle side. What's the difference? Well, look at these sides. Is this side included between these angles? Does segment EF live in between angle D and angle E? It definitely doesn't. Okay, so I know it's angle, angle, side. But here's probably how you should do it. Draw yourself two triangles. We need one triangle to have a D, an E, and an F. And we need the other triangle to have an X, a Y, and a Z. And then what you do is you mark your pairs of congruent parts. So angle D is congruent to angle X. Angle E is congruent to angle Y. So notice how we already have our two pairs of congruent angles marked. Where are the congruent sides? Let's see. Segment EF is congruent to segment YZ. This is probably the best way to see it if you visualize it. So that's why they're congruent, and this is how you know. Those sides are not included. Part B, since the triangles are congruent, which other pair of angles is now congruent? Explain how you know. Well, if you have congruent triangles, then that means all of the corresponding parts are congruent. So what does F correspond with? Angle F corresponds with angle Z. So if the triangles are congruent, those are congruent too.